Hello everyone, welcome to the channel Code Lacking. Guys, if you find this video helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get to today's problem. Partition array according to the given pivot. You are given a zero indexed integer array nums and integer pivot. Rearrange nums such that the following conditions are satisfied. Every element less than the pivot appears before every element greater than the pivot. Every element equal to the pivot appears in between the elements less than and greater than the pivot. The relative order of the elements less than the pivot and the elements greater than the pivot is maintained. More formally, consider every pi or j, where the pi is the new position of the ith element and the pj is the new position of the jth element. If I is less than j, both the elements are smaller or larger than the pivot, then pi should be less than pj. Return the nums after the rearrangement. So in this question we are given an integer array nums and the pivot. So all the elements less than the pivot should come together, and all the elements greater than pivot should come together, and the elements with the pivot equal to the pivot should also come together. So let's see the example here. We are given then array nums as 9, 12, 5, 10, 14, 3 and 10, and pivot is 10. So all the elements less than pivot are 9, 5, 3. So according to the relative, we need to also maintain the relative order. It means that 9 should comes before 5 and 5 should come before 3, because in the original array 9 is appearing before 5 and 5 is appearing before 3. So these element comes together before the pivot and in the relative order as in the given array. The 10 should come, there through the frequency of 10 is 2, so 10 will come together, and similarly the elements greater than pivot comes to this right, as 12 should come before, because it is in the original array 12 is before the 10, before the 14, so 12 and 14 are here. So we need to devise a solution such that all the elements less than the pivot should come together in the relative order, then the pivot element and the elements greater than the pivot in the relative order as in the given array. So in the solution we are just defining an array of size n, and we are counting all the number of elements which are greater than pivot. So in this loop we are counting the nums of I is greater than pivot, then we are incrementing this greater than pivot count. So and also we are maintaining two pointers, which will be the small pivot index and the greater pivot index. So all the elements which have value less than pivot will be we will be placing them in the index, at the index small pivot index, and all the elements greater than the pivot's value we are placing them in the greater than pivot index. How we are going to make sure that all the elements greater than the pivot will come in the right place? So if let's suppose the number of elements greater than pivot is 1, so the index from where we are going to place will be n minus 1. For example, let's say the pivot here is 13, so the number of elements greater than 13 are just 1, so it will be placed at this position, which will be n minus 1. If there are 2 elements, we will place starting from n minus 2 position. This is what we are going to do here. So if the nums of I is greater than pivot, we are just placing them in the result vector at the position greater than pivot and nums of I, and we are incrementing this greater pivot index. If the nums of I is less than pivot, we are just placing it in the small pivot index in res variable, in res vector, and incrementing small pivot index. And now we have placed a smaller and the greater than pivot elements the right position in this res. The only task is to just fill the number of the elements whose values equal to the pivot. So till the small pivot index is less than n minus greater pivot count, which means from where we are filling the greater elements than pivot, just we are just placing pivot here in the gap. For example, we have finished building this array and this array in this loop, so these two elements will be filled in this loop. The time complexity will be big of n, and the space complexity will be big of n if we are considering the result variable. So guys, if you find this video helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.